I'm Cash. Welcome back to Cash Talks Football. I just had to check if my microphone was on. Oh, yeah, we're not doing retakes because it's just funny. This is my coaching session where I'm building up to teaching patterns of play and all sorts of stuff. But mainly for the first couple of weeks, we're focusing on sort of warm-ups and getting those extra minutes when you're training, when you don't have time to train. So, for instance, it doesn't matter what level you're at, Premier League or down to your under, nines. You never get enough time to train with your players. So with your warm-ups, what you're really trying to do, well, what I do is maximize. Actually, I did it in one of my books, Move, Pass, Overlap. Don't buy it. I'm doing a better version. There's a whole philosophy about actual coaching and what you're really supposed to do and how you develop players properly. Don't buy this. I'm doing a better one. There's so many bad things in this book. I'm just bad with technology a lot of the time, and I rush things because I'm just trying to get it out. But basically, the idea is you want to try to redo what you're doing in your training sessions in your warm-ups so you can continue that cycle of player progression and teaching them things. Now, if you notice the cone setup right here, it's the same as we were doing in week one, where you can see, right, we're doing our little warm-ups, runs, blah, blah, blah. However, we're doing our runs to our jogs, jumping heels back, running backwards. You can do it with or without a ball. A million little things you can do with that. We've got the same setup here. So the reason for that is, especially in your warm-up or even in your training sessions, you want as little downtime as possible so you can just switch to the next thing straight away without any time wasted whatsoever. So this is just a simple third man running in a line, and you're going to see where this is going to build up and how you build this up in many things, okay? But it's all related to the game. If it isn't related to the game, don't train it. There was when I was working with a certain football club, and we were away in a different country doing a thing, and I was doing a coaching course with them, and they were shocked because they were like, well, we didn't think we'd ever come here and learn something from somebody because I made this statement. If it's not part of the game, why are you training it? And they're shocked because it makes so much sense. But there's so many things people train in training sessions and go, well, that doesn't happen in the game. It never happens like that. So don't train it. Very important. So right now, this is just a simple. We'll move this forward. We're using this software, which is a play drill. It's quite good. But all we're looking to do is move. Oh, can I hit the little play button? Just had to change it so I can hit the little play button and go through, because their software does little animations and stuff. And this is simple. So let me just explain what's going on here. As soon as you pass the ball, what do? You're following your pass. It's that simple. You're joining the back of the next line here. The reason why something like this is great is because you only need 3 players to get a line, but you can add a 4th or a 5th or a 6th if you need. So when you're coaching, when numbers are a problem, you can add as many players or as little as you want. Now, there's a couple of little caveats where you've got to understand when you're doing that. If you've got 3 players and you're running this for 10 minutes at a high tempo, this is a fantastic fitness session. Your touch might be a little bit off. The passing might be crisp, but you can work on that and get that better. So you can actually do 2 things at the same time. But what are you doing? You're actually teaching players to follow their pass, okay? And that's what you're really getting them to do. Follow the pass. After you pass, is it really? No. What you're really more interested about is after you pass, you don't stand still and you're not watching it. You're not admiring it. You see midfielders do this all the time. They pass the ball and go, oh, that's great. Brilliant. And you haven't trained them to make that run forward to the next line, to the attacking line. So from the halfway line to get into the final third, they don't make the run. This is how you do that, by doing this 100 million times. 100 million, about 10,000. I'll come on to that number 10,000 because you'll know, I use that quite a lot. If you've ever done like a master's course and they'll say, oh, how do you become a master at doing something? It's because you've done 10,000 hours doing the thing. So when you always running after you pass the ball, you get into a habit of doing what? Running after you pass the ball. It becomes subconscious. You're training that little mechanism. When you pass the ball, you have to run. So if you see anyone doing passing drills when people are stood still, they're rubbish. What you've just trained the players to do is that after they've passed the ball, what do? They stand still. So if you ever see that, that's what they're doing. It has to be a dynamic session. You have to have the player constantly moving. Now, there is a caveat to that. If you're working on technique and you're just having one player, 2 players, 1 ball in between, and you're trying to work on a different way of them hitting the ball with their foot, and you're trying to polish technique, that's acceptable. But ultimately, 99 times out of 100, the minute they pass the ball, you want them running, wherever that can be. So the mind goes, as soon as I hit that ball, I've got to be doing something else. I've got to be running. I've got to be sprinting. Away I go. Right. So simple. You can see the setup. Very, very simple. Very, very easy to do. And it's just a transition on from your other one here. But then we move it on from this to the next iteration. Now you've got the concept, starting to get programmed. Pass the ball, I run. I pass the ball, I run. I pass the ball, I run. Now, there's 100 other things that I'd be coaching in there with the technique and the way that they run, how they actually run around the cones, how they actually don't get interfere with the passing in the middle of the field. There's loads of other little disciplinary aspects that you can have involved inside of coaching that. But now when we're going down the field, what we're looking at doing here, same drill. When you pass it, what you're doing is overlapping each player all the way down. I'll play this a couple of times so you can get the idea of what you're doing. It's the exact same drill. It's the same purpose. You pass the ball and you run to the same person, but now you're doing it down the field. Okay. Now, normally what I would do if I was doing this, I'd probably remove these cones in the middle here, because they just get in the way and your players are terrible, and the ball will hit the cone and it's just a mess. You can get those little micro flat cones as well, but it's easier if you've just got no cones, honestly. And you'll get to a point where you won't have any of these cones here at all, and your team will just do it down the field. And you'd have maybe another setup here, but as soon as these three go, the next three would go. You don't want more than three in this drill, unfortunately, but doesn't matter how many players you got, because it's just the next three that go. And you do it again and again and again. And if you think about what you're doing here, this can be a ball to the player out wide as the wing back overlaps. This can be a ball out anywhere. You'll know it fits. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't work for central defenders, the two stood still, because you don't want them running away after they pass the ball. But you want them moving. Normally, it's backwards from where they are because they're too far out the field when they're passing the ball. But that's what you're looking to do. So when you hear things like Arsenal Wenger was installing passing patterns in, hold on, let me see if I can find something. I had to go and find it because this is one of the first coaching books that I ever got my hands on. Well, I didn't get my hands on it years ago. Tony Carr. So in here, he does his old third man running drill, and he does it. See if I can get the camera. No, I can't get the camera right on it. Explaining what I'm explaining, but he's done it in a massive drill format with people stood still. This is an interesting book if you can ever find it. It's got like young Joe Cole and Rio Ferdinand in it. But a lot of the drills and a lot of stuff that they're doing there, they're doing it in an overcomplicated way. And they're doing it down the field, and it's a lot more running than it is actual getting the concept of the technique right. What's the technique? It's following the ball, moving the ball, following the ball, moving the ball, following the ball, moving the ball. And if you've only got that like 15 minutes in your warm up, that's what you want to do. They're more interested there in a long training session for about an hour and a half, trying to get the movement and the third man runner through the midfield. But if you teach the concept and the technique first, when you step forward to do that, it's much, much easier. You're not spending an hour and a half on it. You're spending about 40 minutes because everybody already understands what you're doing. And that's the importance of doing these little technical warm-ups like this, where you're just going through the motions and everyone's understanding what they're doing because it's simple. So when you go to the more complex stuff later on, well, they've already got it. The passing pattern is already ingrained. The movement is already ingrained. They just follow. They just know the system. It's exactly what Man City do, by the way. How do we know that, Cash? Shh, we won't tell anyone. But the same system has gone through because each training session is built on little blocks that complement each other, that go up through. They're not all abstract. So you're doing one training session here that doesn't build into this one over here, and they're all separate. That's not how you build a system. That's not how you get everybody trying to play the same style of play in the same way. You do all of these things. So from warm-ups to your starting your sessions, and everything is done trying to ingrain these certain techniques that you want your team to follow. When you pass the ball, you move, right? So that's where, if you go to my my book here, Move, Pass, Overlap, the move is a couple of things. When you receive the ball, you do a move. What does that move mean? You might do a trick, you might do a step over, you might do a thing, but it's also just means move. So after you pass the ball, you move, you run, you make a motion, you sprint down the line, you sprint through the midfield, you do something after the fact. And you don't stand there. And if you watch the Premier League as much as I do, you'll see it quite often where people say, oh, they're stagnant and there's no movement up front. Movement is just another clever way of saying running. Okay, so when people say there's no movement, there's no dynamic movement, there's no running, that's what they mean. So you create that running by setting the ball in motion. As soon as the ball goes in motion, it's a trigger, because now you run into the space. Where's the space? Doesn't matter. You find it, you make a run. Someone else makes a run into the space that you've just come from, and then you start creating space for your team. And that's how you move the ball quickly, and that's how you break down teams. And you'll see in the Premier League when there's a low block, they call it nowadays. You mean defending? Right, yeah, yeah. One team's defending and the other team has the ball and they'll just rotate the ball around like this, trying to look for gaps. But there's no running. There's no movement in front of them at all because there's no triggers. There's no patterns of play. Why Man City do it is because they run into the half spaces. They're looking to create. They'll bring the defender out from the half space, running behind him. Doesn't work. They'll bring him out, running behind him. Don't goes to the other side. They'll try and do it again on the other side, again on the other side, and they're not doing it consciously. Going, okay, we're looking to do this. It's because of all the plays that they do and all the drills that they run dictates that that's just end up what they do subconsciously. They just play that way. It just happens by proxy because every day they're playing that way in training. So when they get onto the field, they just continue to do it. And that's where it comes from. But other than that, I'll let you be. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And I'll see you next time on Cash Talks Football.